Billionaire's son secretly dates Maid's daughter. They learn they were switched at birth. Naomi Jones sat cross-legged on the thin mattress tucked in the attic of the Carter mansion, her fingers smudged with pencil lead. Outside, Atlanta's late summer sun poured through the slanted window, lighting up the page where she'd been sketching a deep plum evening gown. Silk, strong shoulders, a neckline that demanded attention. She sighed, tracing the hem one last time before the shout came from downstairs. "Naomi, get down here and help with these windows before Miss Janelle see 'em." Her mother's voice was as sharp as ever, full of stress and motion, already halfway through her daily rounds as the Carter family's live-in maid. Naomi tucked her sketchpad beneath the mattress and stood, brushing invisible dust off her jeans. The attic floor creaked beneath her bare feet as she moved toward the narrow staircase, each step a reminder that she lived above the home but not inside it. Outside, the estate glimmered like a palace, polished marble, tall columns, trimmed hedges, wealth everywhere, but none of it hers. She stepped into the bright hallway just as the front door swung open and Malik Carter strolled in, sunglasses perched low on his nose, car keys swinging from one hand. His white t-shirt hugged his lean frame, and he wore that usual expression, like he owned every inch of the world he walked through. Naomi turned away and grabbed a bottle of Windex and a cloth from the hallway cabinet, heading toward the front windows. "You clean like you're trying to erase the whole house," Malik said, leaning lazily against the banister. His voice was smooth, half amused, half admiring. Naomi didn't look at him. "And you breathe like it's a performance." He chuckled. "Damn, you always this mean? Or is it just me?" She finally glanced at him, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "I'm nice to people who don't think they're God's gift." "Good thing I don't," he said, stepping closer. Just his favorite. She rolled her eyes, but didn't move away. When he reached for the bottle of cleaner, their fingers brushed. Something sparked. She looked down, heart fluttering, but quickly pulled back. He stepped beside her, took the cloth, and started wiping the window. Badly. She watched him for a few seconds, smirked, then snatched it back. "That's not how you do it." "Then show me." Their eyes locked. For a moment it felt like the world paused, but the sound of heels clicking against marble broke the spell. Janelle Carter, tall and statuesque in a cream silk blouse and pencil skirt, entered the room like a judge walking into court. Her eyes swept the scene, her son standing much too close to the maid's daughter, and her lips thinned. "Naomi," she said coolly, "that window's still streaked. You've been working on it long enough." Naomi straightened immediately. "Yes, Mom." Janelle's gaze flicked toward her son, then back to the girl. "I hope you remember your place in this house." Naomi bit down on the words she wanted to say. Instead, she dipped her head and turned away. Janelle said nothing more, but the message lingered long after she walked off. Malik watched her go, then turned back to Naomi. "You shouldn't let her talk to you like that." "She signs my mama's paycheck," Naomi said, "and until I can pay my own, I keep my mouth shut." He frowned. "You ever think maybe you're meant for more than this?" Naomi looked at him, truly looked. "I think about it every day." A few hours later, as the sky faded into dusk and the lights of the estate flickered on one by one, Naomi stood barefoot in the garden, shaking out a fresh sheet for the clothesline. The warm breeze carried the scent of roses and something else. Cologne. She turned just as Malik stepped out from behind the fountain, hands in his pockets, watching her like he hadn't seen her 1,000 times before. "Come out with me tonight," he said. She laughed once. "What?" "Come out. No rich house, no uniforms, no eyes on us." "Malik, just say yes. We'll leave the city, ride with the top down, music low. Just you and me." She hesitated, the sheet hanging limp between her hands. "Why me?" she asked. He stepped closer. "Because I've been surrounded by everything money can buy, and none of it looks at me the way you do." The silence between them grew thick. "Okay," she whispered. Later that night, as the mansion settled into sleep, Naomi slipped quietly down the back stairs. She'd changed into a soft sundress, curls loose, nerves alive in every limb. Outside, Malik waited in his Mercedes, door open, eyes shining as he took her in. She climbed in. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the second-floor window, a wineglass in one hand, rage in the other. Janelle Carter didn't say a word, but her eyes burned with something sharp. Not in my house, she thought. Not ever. The next morning came too fast. Naomi tiptoed through the Carter mansion just before sunrise, her sandals muffled by the Persian rugs. Her heart still fluttered from the night before, the rooftop jazz lounge Malik had taken her to, the way the lights of downtown Atlanta twinkled like stars beneath their feet. He'd made her laugh, told her secrets about his childhood, even held her hand like it was something precious. He'd kissed her when he dropped her off behind the kitchen entrance, soft, slow, and so unlike the boys she knew from school or church. She hadn't slept a wink since, but she didn't regret it. By the time Denise caught her slipping in through the laundry room, the sky was orange with dawn. "Where you been?" her mother demanded, her voice low and tight. She didn't shout. Denise Jones never shouted. She sliced her disappointment like a blade. Naomi looked down. "Just out." "With him?" Denise didn't need to say his name. They both knew. Naomi nodded. Denise sat heavily on the bench by the pantry, the weight of 18 years heavy in her eyes. "I scrub floors in this house. I clean sheets that woman wouldn't even let her own husband touch. And you think they gon' let you date they son?" Naomi's throat tightened. "He's not like them." Denise looked at her long and hard. "He is them. Just 'cause he's sweet now don't mean he don't come from the same poison." Naomi didn't reply. She couldn't. Denise stood, pulled a rag from her apron, and tossed it into Naomi's hands. "Wipe the upstairs mirrors. Mrs. Carter got company coming. I'll deal with you later." By noon, Naomi was in the East Wing, cloth in hand, polishing a mirror that cost more than her mother's yearly salary. She kept her head down, her thoughts swirling with Malik's smile and her mother's words. From down the hall, Malik's voice echoed, angry, rising. "You think I don't see it? You barely look at me unless I'm on TV or in the press." Naomi paused, hiding behind the tall armoire, as Janelle's reply snapped back, crisp and cool. "I look at you when you're not embarrassing me, Malik." "Because I brought a girl to a rooftop? Seriously? A girl who lives in this house, who folds our towels." Malik's voice dropped, bitter now. "You hate me, don't you? You've always hated me." Janelle's silence said more than words. Naomi held her breath until the footsteps faded. Later that afternoon, while delivering fresh towels to the guest suites, Naomi bumped into him. Malik stood in the hallway, shirt untucked, fists clenched at his sides. He looked at her like he needed air. "She thinks you're dirt," he said quietly. Naomi shrugged. "I know. But I don't. I know that too." They didn't touch, not then, but something stronger passed between them. An understanding, a promise, unspoken but undeniable. That evening, in the backyard garden where Naomi sometimes read, a shadow stepped out from behind a magnolia tree. Tyrell Morgan. He wore jeans low on his hips, a gold chain glinting in the sunset, and eyes that studied her too closely. "You the one Malik's been sneaking around with?" he asked, arms crossed. Naomi narrowed her eyes. "Who's asking?" "Somebody who knows what Carter blood really look like, and it ain't in him." She blinked. "Excuse me?" Tyrell smiled. not kindly. "Watch your back, Naomi. That house you livin' in got secrets big enough to bury you." Before she could ask anything, he was gone. That night, Denise crept into her room, holding a worn envelope. She stared at it for a long time before sitting on Naomi's bed, eyes shining. "Sometimes," she whispered, more to herself than to Naomi, "love ain't enough to fix what's broken." Naomi looked down at the envelope. "What is that?" Denise stood and walked to the fireplace. "Nothing." And just like that, she tossed it into the flames. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. But someone else had been watching through the cracked attic door. Someone who'd seen the label on the envelope, birth certificate, name, Naomi Elise Carter. The Carter estate glowed under the warm haze of dusk, its tall iron gates shutting out the city like a different world entirely. Inside, chandeliers flickered to life, and music drifted faintly through the walls. Naomi adjusted her earrings in the small mirror above the servant's sink. Her dress, a midnight blue maxi she'd saved for months to buy, clung to her curves in all the right places, even if it wasn't designer. Outside, the quiet growl of Malik's car engine purred at the edge of the driveway. She slipped out the back entrance like she'd done the night before, heart thudding in her chest. He didn't say a word when she climbed in. He just looked at her, long and low, like he was seeing something brand new. "You sure about this?" he asked as he pulled away from the mansion. "No," Naomi said, "but I don't want to be scared anymore." They rode in silence at first, winding through the slick-lit streets of Atlanta. The air buzzed with music from open windows, and the smell of barbecue and jasmine from roadside vendors. Malik drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting just inches from hers, close enough that she felt its warmth, but far enough to make her want it more. They arrived at a rooftop jazz lounge in Midtown, the kind of place where names mattered and faces were watched. Malik guided her through the velvet ropes like she belonged there, brushing off the host's second glance when she gave Naomi a once-over. Inside, the band played a sultry version of At Last, the kind that sank into your skin. They sat near the edge, city lights sprawling out around them like melted gold. Naomi didn't drink, but the server brought sparkling cider in flutes anyway. Malik ordered lamb sliders and truffle fries, talking casually like this was just another Thursday, but his eyes never left her. "You ever think about leaving all this?" she asked, biting into a fry. "You mean the mansion, my dad's shadow, every headline with my name in it?" He laughed once without humor. "Every damn day." "You don't seem trapped." He leaned in closer. "You ever see a bird in a diamond cage? Still can't fly." Naomi looked away, unsure how to respond. That's when she spotted him. Across the rooftop, standing near the exit, Tyrell Morgan leaned against a railing, drink in hand, eyes locked straight on her. He raised his glass slowly, like a warning. Naomi froze. Malik noticed the shift in her expression and followed her gaze. When his eyes landed on Tyrell, his jaw tightened. "You know him? Sort of. He grew up near me. We're not friends." "Then why he watching you like he owns something?" Naomi didn't answer. Neither did Malik. Tyrell stayed there a few minutes longer, then disappeared into the shadows. Later that night, back in the driveway of the Carter mansion, the air hung thick between them. Malik reached over, brushing her hair away from her face. "You scared of what this is?" "I'm scared of what it'll cost." He tilted her chin toward him. "Naomi, I don't care who gets mad. I want you." Their lips met again, deeper this time, lingering in the quiet dark. They didn't see the flash behind the hedges. Someone had taken a photo. The next morning, the entire house buzzed with tension. Preston Carter sat at the breakfast table in a dark grey suit, scrolling silently through his phone. On screen, a blurry but damning image of his son, kissing the maid's daughter outside their home, timestamp and all. He didn't speak as he set the phone down. He just sipped his coffee once, then turned to Denise as she entered with the silver tray. "Tell your daughter," he said flatly, "that if she wants to stay in this house, she needs to remember the rules." Denise didn't flinch, but in her eyes, something burned. Hours later, Naomi found her mother scrubbing the baseboards in silence. Her arms moved in sharp, practiced motions. The smell of lemon cleaner stung Naomi's nose. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Denise didn't stop scrubbing. "Trouble finds girls like us just for breathing, Naomi. You went out and gave it a seat at the table." Naomi's voice cracked. "I'm not ashamed of loving him." Denise looked up at her then. Really looked. "I ain't telling you not to love, baby. I'm telling you not to get burned. This house, these people, they smile in your face and bury you the second you forget your place." That night, Naomi stood alone in the attic. She stared at her sketch pad, the designs blurring behind her tears. She was tired of pretending, tired of hiding, and tired of not knowing what was real. So when she heard the knock on her window, she didn't hesitate. Malik stood there, one foot on the fire escape, eyes full of something desperate. "I don't care anymore," he said. "Let them burn. I'm not letting them choose who I get to love." Naomi climbed out the window and into his arms. Neither of them saw the shadow in the hallway. Not Denise, not Janelle. It was someone else entirely. And he'd heard everything. Denise Jones had always known silence could be loud. That morning, it screamed. She moved through the Carter mansion with robotic grace, fluffing pillows, checking silver trays, pouring fresh squeezed juice into glass pitchers, while her ears strained for sounds that didn't belong. A hushed conversation, a door closing too softly, the clipped click of Janelle's heels echoing against marble with just enough venom to mean trouble. Naomi hadn't come back in through the fire escape until after 3 in the morning. Denise had pretended to sleep, just long enough to keep from saying what her heart already knew. She was losing her daughter, to love, to secrets, to a legacy that didn't belong to them, or maybe one that did. By mid-afternoon, the storm broke. Janelle entered the kitchen like the blade of a knife, lips painted wine dark, and voice low enough to cut. She set her clutch on the marble counter with a soft thud, and looked at Denise without blinking. "Control your daughter." Denise didn't move. "Excuse me?" "She's sneaking around with Malik. She was out with him again last night, at that jazz lounge downtown, wearing lipstick, touching him in public like she forgot who signs her mother's checks." Denise took a breath through her nose. "They're young. They're dangerous." Janelle leaned in, voice colder now. "You think I don't see the way she looks at him? Like she belongs here, like she's one of us. That little fantasy ends today." Denise stood taller. "You don't want to do this with me, Janelle." "Oh, I do, because I know something's off. I felt it, and when I find it, I'm dragging both of you out by the roots." Janelle grabbed her bag and turned. "Keep her out of my son's room, out of my family, and out of my bloodline." Denise didn't respond, but her hands were shaking as she reached for the teacups. Upstairs, Naomi paced her room in silence, fingers twitching with nervous energy. She hadn't spoken to her mother yet. She didn't know about the photo, or Janelle's visit. She only knew that Malik had kissed her like she meant something. A soft knock came at her door. When she opened it, she froze. Terrell stood in the hallway, leaned against the frame with the swagger of a man who knew something you didn't. "You always leave windows unlocked?" he asked. "Dangerous in a house like this." "What do you want?" He stepped inside without asking. "Got a question for you," he said. "How well do you know your mama?" Naomi crossed her arms. "Well enough." Funny, 'cause I knew her too. Knew her when she used to come crying into my auntie's house, holding a baby that didn't look nothing like her. Naomi's heart skipped. What are you talking about? You ever wonder why you look more like them Carter folks than her? Big eyes, same skin tone as Malik, same damn smile. She blinked, mouth dry. Tyrell grinned. Don't worry, sweetheart. I ain't here to blow nothing up. Yet. Just want you to know something ain't right, and I'm gonna find out what. He left just as quickly as he came, leaving the scent of cheap cologne and something heavier. Suspicion. That night, after dinner, Denise sat alone in the laundry room, staring at the back of a picture frame she kept tucked inside her coat pocket. An old baby photo, a hospital tag with a name crossed out, a bracelet, soft pink ribbon, faded from years of being hidden in places no one would look. She held them in her lap, like confessions. Preston found her there. He didn't knock. He just walked in, tie loose around his neck, eyes tired. I warned you, he said softly. You warned me to keep my child from knowing who she really is, Denise replied. She's grown now, and smart. She's gonna start asking questions I can't keep lying through. She doesn't need to know. You think that girl wants the weight of this family on her back? You think Malik can handle knowing he's not? His voice faded. Denise stood. Then tell him the truth, or I will. Preston stepped closer, voice low. You still think I'm the man who held you all those years ago, but I buried him the day Naomi was born. If you love that girl, you'll keep her away from my family. And from my son. As he turned to leave, Denise said the one thing she'd been afraid of for years. She's your daughter, Preston. He didn't stop walking, didn't even flinch, but when the door closed behind him, the silence left behind was deafening. Upstairs, Naomi found a photo tucked in the back of her mother's drawer while looking for a scarf. It was old, creased at the edges, a baby in Preston's arms, but the face wasn't Malik's, it was hers, and in the corner, someone had written a name in faded ink, Naomi Elise Carter. The boutique was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet Naomi liked, filled only with the soft hum of a steamer and the occasional squeak of a mannequin being turned. Light streamed through the wide windows, catching dust motes in its glow, and spilling across bolts of jewel-toned fabric, draped like dreams waiting to be cut. Naomi stood in the back, her hands shaking just slightly as she smoothed the fabric of the dress she'd sewn in secret. Midnight velvet with hand-sewn beading down the side like a river of stars, cut to the shape she'd always imagined but never seen on a Carter party guest. She hadn't put her name on the submission tag, just a label, Ellis Designs, her middle name, her mother's maiden name, her backup plan. Janelle Carter walked in 20 minutes late, phone glued to her ear and heels ticking across the hardwood like a metronome. She didn't look up until she reached the rack. One of the boutique stylists began flipping through the designs, speaking in a voice that sounded rehearsed. This piece came in this morning from a new designer. No background yet, but the craftsmanship is excellent. Janelle's eyes moved lazily until they landed on the midnight velvet gown. Something in her expression sharpened. She stepped closer, ran a manicured finger down the stitched line, then held it up to the light. This, she said, this is the one. Naomi, half hidden in the back room doorway, pressed her hand over her mouth. Janelle had no idea she'd chosen her own maid's daughter's design. She smiled, just a little, as a quiet thrill coursed through her chest. For 1 minute, just one, she wasn't Naomi the help. She was Naomi the designer. Naomi the girl with ideas no one had seen yet. But the moment didn't last. Back at the mansion, Malik was waiting outside her room when she returned. He leaned against the doorframe with that lazy posture he used when he was trying to act calm. But she saw the tension in his jaw, the twitch in his fingers. He was angry, not at her, at something bigger. He followed her inside and shut the door behind them. "They showed my dad that photo," he said. "Someone took it when we kissed in the driveway." Naomi froze. "And now?" Malik shook his head, looking away. "Now I'm apparently disgracing the family name. My mother screamed. My dad didn't even speak, just walked past me like I wasn't standing there." Naomi sat down on the edge of the bed. "You knew this was coming." "I did," he admitted. "I just thought maybe we'd have more time." Silence bloomed between them, heavy but not hopeless. Malik sat beside her, elbows on his knees. "Why don't we leave?" he asked. "Like really leave. I can take care of you. I've got money, trust funds, stocks. I can sell the car. I don't care." Naomi stared at him. "And then what? We run until what? The money runs out? The press catches up? Our parents throw us away completely?" He didn't answer. She reached for his hand. "You think I don't want to? You think I don't dream of that every single night?" "I know you do," he said quietly. "But there's something else, Malik. Something I haven't told you." She stood and crossed the room, pulling a photo from the bottom of her sketch drawer. She handed it to him. He took one look and went still. "That's my dad." "And that's me," she said, "as a baby, in his arms." Malik blinked. "No, that doesn't make sense." "I found it in my mum's drawer. It had my full name written on the back." Malik stood, backing away like the walls were closing in. "What are you saying?" Naomi swallowed hard. "I don't know, but I think something happened back then. Something nobody told us." A knock came at the door. They turned in unison. Denise entered slowly, a folded piece of paper in her hand. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes looked like someone who hadn't slept in 18 years. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that picture," she said. Malik's voice was low. "Is it true?" Denise looked at Naomi, then Malik, then back again. The silence stretched until it broke her. "I don't know how it happened. Not exactly. There were rumors after the delivery, nurses whispering, a baby crying 2 rooms down and a switchboard error. I thought it was just hospital gossip. But one morning I came home from the nursery and the bracelet wasn't on your wrist, Naomi. It was a different one. Same baby, but not the same." Naomi sat slowly, trying to steady her breath. "Why didn't you say anything?" Denise laughed softly, bitterly. "Because by the time I was sure, it was too late. You were already mine, and he," she nodded toward Malik, "already theirs." Malik dropped into the chair like someone had cut his strings. "So I'm not—" Denise's voice cracked. "I don't know what you are, but I know who you've been. And that boy," she pointed at Malik, "has been the only one who's ever looked at you like you were more than this house. So whatever name you carry, you don't let them steal that." Outside, the clouds had darkened. Thunder rolled low in the sky, distant but coming closer. Denise left them alone again. Naomi looked over at Malik. He was staring at the floor, fists clenched. "Do you hate me now?" she asked. He lifted his eyes. "What?" "No. Because if what she said is true, I might be your father's daughter." He stood, walked over, and knelt in front of her. He took her hands. "You've always been the girl I wanted. That doesn't change just because the story got messier." She blinked back tears. He leaned up, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "We figure this out," he whispered, "together." That night, across town, Terrell Morgan stood outside the hospital with a crumpled envelope in his hand. Inside it, a DNA test. 2 names, 1 match. He read it twice, smiled once, then looked toward the Carter mansion glowing far off on the hill. "Looks like I got a seat at the table after all," he said. And this time, he wasn't knocking. The Carter mansion glittered that night like a crown atop the Atlanta hills. Gold light spilled from every window. Valets ushered luxury vehicles into an endless procession beneath the stone archway. Strings of crystal hung from the arched ceiling inside, catching the chandelier's glow, while a live jazz band played low and slow from behind a curtain of sheer silk. It was Malik Carter's 18th birthday, and Preston Carter was throwing a party fit for royalty. But the prince? He stood outside on the back patio, ignoring the event held in his honor. Malik leaned against the marble railing, staring out over the pool, suit jacket slung over one shoulder, hands buried in his pockets. His jaw was tight. Inside, 100 people toasted him with champagne, but none of them knew what he now knew. Not the guests, not the reporters loitering by the shrimp tower, not even Janelle, who floated across the ballroom like a queen in lavender chiffon, wearing a smile too white to be real. He didn't want to be here, but his father had made it clear. You will show up, you will smile, you will act like a Carter. Malik had replied, Am I one? And Preston, without looking up from his whiskey, had said, Tonight you are. A door creaked open behind him. Naomi stepped out onto the patio, wearing a satin black dress that hugged her curves and sparkled slightly at the hem. Her hair was pulled up, gold earrings swinging gently as she walked. She looked like she belonged in the ballroom, not behind the serving trays. But tonight, she was on the clock, serving drinks, wearing a name tag, and breaking every silent rule this house had lived by for years. He turned when he heard her steps. You came, he murmured. Naomi gave a small smile. I wasn't going to, but then I thought, let them stare. He took her hand without asking. Walk with me, he said. They crossed the patio into the shadows, disappearing around the corner near the garden fountain. The music faded behind them, replaced by the crickets and the hum of hidden tension. She glanced at him. You told me not to come, that your dad didn't want me here. I don't care what he wants. Naomi looked down at the stone path beneath their feet. You think he knows? Malik laughed dryly. My father knows everything. He's known how to hurt people with silence since the day he was born. But tonight is the last time I'll play his game. Back inside, Denise watched the ballroom from the far wall, her catering uniform blending into the wallpaper. She hadn't wanted Naomi to be here. She'd begged her to call in sick, but Naomi had insisted. Let them see me, she'd said. I'm done hiding. Across the room, Janelle raised a champagne glass to a group of board members and laughed too loudly at something no one said. But it wasn't Janelle Denise was watching. It was Preston. He hadn't said a word to her all evening, but she'd caught him looking. Once, early in the night, when Naomi stepped into the room, his face had gone still for just a second. Long enough for Denise to know? Yes, he knew, and he was scared. She started to move toward the garden doors, but someone blocked her path. Tyrell. He wasn't dressed for the party, no tux, no cufflinks, just a black button-down and the confidence of someone who didn't need an invitation. He looked around slowly, eyes full of fire. Well, damn, he said. Nice place. Denise's breath caught. You shouldn't be here. He tilted his head. Funny, that's what they used to tell me when I was a kid. Now, I got a paper in my pocket says half of this is mine. You don't understand what you're walking into. No, Auntie D, he said, voice mocking. I understand perfectly. Your little princess got raised in the big house, and I got left in the projects, wondering why I didn't look like nobody. Denise's eyes flashed. You think I wanted this? I think you made a choice. Tyrell turned toward the center of the ballroom, voice rising. Yo, he shouted, happy birthday to the rich boy. The music stumbled, conversations died, every head turned toward him. Tyrell stepped into the middle of the floor, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. I'm Tyrell Morgan. Maybe some of y'all heard of me. Maybe you haven't. But after tonight, you will. Security started toward him. Preston didn't move. Janelle's mouth hung slightly open. I grew up on the south side. No daddy, no money. Just a bracelet my mama said came from the hospital. You want to know what the tag said? He held it up. Carter. The room gasped. Denise closed her eyes. Tyrell didn't stop. This here is a DNA test, fresh from the lab. Preston Carter's name, and mine. I ain't no con. I ain't no scam. I'm blood. Malik stepped into the doorway then, Naomi at his side. He didn't look surprised, just tired. Preston finally spoke. This isn't the place. Tyrell snapped back. No, old man. This is exactly the place. You built your whole damn empire off keeping people like me out of rooms like this. The guards closed in. Tyrell handed the test to one of the board members and raised both hands. You want to throw me out? Fine. But first ask yourselves, if I'm not who I say I am, why'd he let me talk this long? He turned toward Preston. You buried the truth, but now it's digging itself out. And with that, he let them escort him out, not with shame, but with purpose. Naomi stood frozen. Malik looked at her, eyes full of quiet pain. Is it true? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Preston rubbed a hand over his face, the mask slipping. Denise turned away from the room, pressing her fist against her lips. Janelle's wineglass shattered on the floor, and outside, as the guests whispered and phones began to buzz, the moon watched it all unfold in silence. The mansion was quieter than it had any right to be. After Tyrell's explosive interruption, most of the guests had left, murmuring rumors as they descended the grand staircase in packs of confusion and delight. The party meant to celebrate Malik Carter's future had instead cracked the past wide open. Naomi stood alone in the garden, barefoot now, her heels abandoned somewhere near the pool. The grass was cold beneath her feet, dew starting to settle in the blades. Her dress still shimmered faintly under the moonlight, but the moment for beauty had long passed. Inside the house, Janelle screamed. The sound was muffled through the thick glass doors, but Naomi could hear every note of it. Fury, betrayal, disbelief. Dishes breaking, voices rising. She turned away. She couldn't listen to more. Malik had disappeared after Tyrell dropped the test results in front of the entire board. Naomi hadn't seen him since, though she could feel him, somewhere nearby, hurting. She was hurting too. She stepped down from the stone steps into the shadowed edge of the yard, where the garden met the trees. That was where she found Denise, sitting on the low stone wall, face in her hands, shoulders hunched with the weight of 18 years of silence. Naomi sat beside her mother without a word. For a long time they just breathed in unison. Crickets filled the silence between them. You knew, Naomi finally said. Her voice didn't accuse, it simply trembled. Denise raised her head. Her cheeks were wet. I suspected. I prayed I was wrong. Naomi looked up at the sky. So who am I? Really? You're my baby, Denise whispered. No, Naomi said, gently but firmly. Not what I mean. Who are they to me? Is Preston my... Denise nodded once, slowly. Naomi closed her eyes. And Malik? Denise didn't answer at first. You were born in the same hospital, same night. The nurses, something happened, a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't told much. One nurse came to me crying 3 days later, talking about babies being moved around. They fired her that same week. And you didn't say anything? I was a maid with no husband and no power. You were fed, safe, growing. I didn't want to believe it. And then Malik, he looked more and more like me, like your grandfather. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself, trembling. All this time I thought I was nobody. Just the maid's daughter, and now I find out I'm a Carter? It was never about the name, Denise said. It was about love. I chose you every day, even when the truth scared me. But they didn't choose me. Inside the house, Preston Carter stood at the edge of the ballroom, staring out at the trail of crushed champagne flutes and half-eaten canapes. His guests were gone. His name was all over the blogs now. Carter dynasty cracked open. Illegitimate son claims empire. His legacy, bleeding in real time. Janelle emerged from the study, glass of whiskey in her hand. Her dress strap had slipped off one shoulder. She looked disheveled, furious, and dangerous. "You lied to me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Preston didn't turn. "Did you know?" she demanded. "About Naomi?" "Yes." She flinched like he'd hit her. "For how long?" 18 years. Janelle let out a bitter laugh. "So you let me raise another woman's child while your actual daughter folded my linens?" "She didn't know. You made a fool of me." "I made a choice," he snapped, finally turning toward her. "I made a choice to protect the family. I didn't think you'd care either way." "I could have loved her," she said quietly, "if I'd known she was mine." Preston's mouth twitched. "You didn't love Malik. You tolerated him because he was a Carter. That's what mattered to you." Janelle threw the glass against the wall. He didn't flinch. Upstairs, in his bedroom, Malik sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing his suit, shirt unbuttoned, tie discarded on the floor. He stared at the wall in front of him, at nothing. His phone buzzed again, messages from friends, gossip, questions, a few well-placed emojis from cousins asking, "Bro, are you adopted?" He didn't answer any of them. There was a knock at the door. He didn't move. It opened anyway. Naomi stepped inside, barefoot, dress still clinging to her like smoke. Malik didn't look at her. "So you're the heir now," he said flatly. "Guess that makes you the one with the mansion." Naomi sat beside him slowly. "I don't want any of it. I don't know who I am." "You're Malik. You're still the boy who fixed my bike chain when I was 7 and didn't tell your mom you caught me eating one of the croissants off the silver tray." He let out a small laugh, bitter and raw. "You know what's messed up?" he said. "I didn't even care about being a Carter until today, until it got taken from me." "You didn't lose your name," she said. "You lost a lie." He turned his face to her finally. "And gained what?" "Me," she whispered. They sat in silence. "I found the photo," she said after a moment. "The one of me in his arms." "Do you think he ever loved me?" Malik asked. "Even knowing I wasn't his blood?" Naomi touched his hand. "I think he loved the idea of you, and when that idea cracked, he didn't know what to do with the real boy underneath." Malik looked down. "I'm scared." "Me too." He looked at her. "Does this mean we can't be—" She shook her head. "We're not related, not by blood. I made Denise show me the bracelet. Mine was pink, yours was blue. They weren't swapped with each other, just with someone else. You and me, we're not siblings." Relief passed over his face so quickly it made her heart ache. "You're the only thing that's ever felt real," he said quietly. Naomi kissed him then, slow and full of sorrow and promise all at once. Outside the door, Denise leaned against the wall, listening to the quiet between them. Inside her apron pocket was a sealed letter, one she'd written 18 years ago, then never mailed. It was addressed to Preston Carter. E. the child. It might be time to open it. Across town, Tyrell sat in a hotel suite paid for with Preston's hush fund. Hush he'd never agreed to. He read the DNA results again, not because he needed to, but because he liked the feel of paper that proved the world owed him. "Phase 1, he muttered, pouring himself a drink. Complete. He looked out the window at the city skyline, his eyes settling on the Carter Hotel's glowing rooftop sign. Now let's see how long it takes to burn it all down. The lab report sat on the dresser, unopened. Tyrell Morgan stared at it like it might explode. His hotel room was silent save for the distant hum of the air conditioning and the faint city sounds, muffled behind thick glass. The envelope was still warm from his grip, and the only thing that stopped him from tearing it open was fear, not of what was inside, but of what it would mean once he knew. He'd waited 18 years to feel like he mattered. His Aunt Denise always said he was special, but never said why. He remembered hearing whispers when he was a kid, late-night phone calls, women speaking low and fast in kitchens, the way people sometimes stopped talking when he walked into the room. The bracelet had been a joke at first, just a dusty little thing his aunt kept in a shoebox under her bed. But when his cousin dared him to wear it, Denise snatched it away so fast her hand trembled. He'd never forgotten that. And now, here he was, hotel paid for by hush money, a suit hanging on the back of a chair he didn't buy, and a test on the dresser that would tell him if his blood was the same as Preston Carter's, the man whose face stared down from billboards, magazines, and the hallway portraits of every Carter property in Georgia. Tyrell picked it up, ripped it open, read it once, then again. Positive match. He stood still for a long time, the weight of the truth pressing into his chest like a second heartbeat. So it was real. He was Preston's son, not Malik, not the golden boy with the marble staircase and the private school education, not the polished face at every Carter gala. The blood, the name, the truth. It belonged to Tyrell now, and he was going to use it. Meanwhile, back at the Carter mansion, Malik stood in his father's study. He hadn't been invited. The heavy double doors had been left open, an oversight Preston would never have allowed if he were thinking clearly. But the king was distracted, and the prince who was no longer a prince had come for answers. Preston sat behind the desk, his back ramrod straight, as if posture alone could preserve the illusion of control. "Why?" Malik asked quietly. Preston didn't look up. "Why what?" "You knew I wasn't your son, all this time, and you didn't say a word. You were mine in every way that mattered." "That's not an answer." Preston finally met his gaze. His eyes were bloodshot but cold. "You needed a name, a legacy. I gave you one." Malik stepped closer. "You needed a prop, a pawn, someone to parade in a tuxedo while you smiled for investors." "That too." Malik let out a breathless laugh, half rage, half heartbreak. "You let me think I belonged here." "You did," Preston said. "You still do. Number I was your story. Naomi is your truth." At her name, Preston's mouth tightened. "I did what I had to do." Malik shook his head. "You mean you buried what you didn't want to deal with? A baby that didn't fit your image? A woman you treated like help, even after she gave you your real child?" Preston said nothing. The silence was answer enough. "Tyrell's not gonna stop," Malik warned. "You can pay him off, threaten him, whatever, but he's hungry, and this house has a lot to feed on." Preston finally stood, voice hard. "That boy wants chaos. He doesn't understand what it takes to keep an empire standing." "Maybe he doesn't want to keep it standing," Malik said. "Maybe he wants to burn it down." Preston stared at him. For a moment he looked smaller than he ever had before. Malik turned to go, but paused at the door. "I don't know who I am anymore," he said, "but I know I'm not yours." And he left. Outside, the air was hot and heavy. Summer thunderclouds rolled in over the hills, casting long shadows across the estate. Malik walked to the garage, threw open the doors, and stared at the row of vehicles lined like trophies on a shelf. His Mercedes, his birthday gift from 2 years ago, still gleaming, still soulless. He didn't take it. Instead, he walked, through the gates, down the hill, past the manicured hedges, and the guards who didn't stop him. They just looked at him with blank faces, unsure if he was still the man they were paid to protect. Naomi found him an hour later at the old stone bridge near the creek. It was the place they used to go when they were kids, when she was still the maid's daughter and he was the Carter heir. A place where names hadn't mattered yet. He was sitting with his back against the railing, legs stretched out, a bottle of water beside him, hair mussed by the wind. She approached slowly, heart caught in her throat. "You okay?" she asked. "No," he said. She sat beside him, said nothing. "I read it," he said after a while. "The test. It's real." "I know." He turned to her. "You still want to be with me? After everything?" "I'm not in love with your name," Naomi said. "I'm in love with you." He looked down. "But I don't know who I am." She reached over and took his hand. "Then let's figure it out together." Far away, in a dim apartment in South Atlanta, Tyrell stood in front of a mirror, trying on a Carter cufflink for the first time. It felt heavy. Good. His phone buzzed, a message from a blocked number. "Meet me, parking deck, Carter Tower, midnight." He smiled. The game had begun, and blood was only the opening move. The Carter mansion looked the same, but it no longer felt the same. The light from the chandeliers seemed colder now. The air, once perfumed with lavender and money, smelled faintly of panic. Staff moved through the halls like shadows, speaking in hushed tones, never meeting eyes. Gossip traveled faster than footsteps, and everyone, from the kitchen boy to the chief of operations, had heard it. There was another son. The maid's daughter is blood. The heir isn't the heir. And above it all hovered one name like a warning bell: Tyrell. Naomi stood in the grand hallway, still wearing her denim jacket from the walk over. She'd been avoiding the house all morning, sitting on a bench outside the chapel near Peachtree Road, sketchbook in her lap, too anxious to draw a single line. But now she was back, and everyone was watching her, some with confusion, others with fear. She wasn't the maid's daughter anymore. She was Naomi Carter, and that changed everything. Denise was the first to see her from across the hall. She dropped the laundry basket in her arms and rushed forward. "You shouldn't have come back today," she whispered, glancing toward the stairs. "I had to," Naomi said. "He's in that house, Mama, and he thinks he owns it now." "They let him in?" "Not officially," Naomi said, "but Tyrell doesn't wait for doors to open. He kicks them in." Upstairs, the meeting room in Preston Carter's private office suite was already filled with tension thick enough to cut. Tyrell stood near the head of the long oak table, sleeves rolled up, confidence worn like armor. Half the board sat across from him, their expressions ranging from suspicion to thinly veiled panic. The other half had already folded, either bribed, intimidated, or quietly swayed by the blood test copies Tyrell had handed out the night before. He leaned against the table with casual power, a predator in a room full of deer. "So," he said, "we gonna keep pretending this place ain't mine? Or are we finally ready to talk about the Carter legacy?" Preston sat at the head, arms crossed, unreadable. "You have no legal standing here," he said coolly. "Name on a test doesn't make you family. This company was built by sweat, sacrifice, and strategy." Tyrell grinned. "Then I guess I'm already qualified. You just described my entire life." An older board member leaned forward. "Even if this revelation holds weight, the transition of any shares would require formal process." Tyrell cut him off. "Yeah, about that. Check your email. 10 minutes ago." Phones buzzed, screens lit up, and then the silence hit again. One by one, board members stared at the documents forwarded from Tyrell's legal counsel, a formal motion to audit the Carter Trust, along with evidence of suppressed hospital records and a silenced nurse's deposition from nearly 2 decades ago. Janelle, seated near the window, didn't even bother pretending to be shocked. She stood slowly, glass in hand, and said, "I told you this would happen." Preston glanced at her. "Not now, Janelle." "No, now," she snapped. "You let that girl grow up in my house folding napkins. You lied to me. You lied to him." She gestured to Malik, who sat stone still at the far end, jaw tight, hands clasped together. "And you know what hurts the most?" Janelle's voice wavered. "I could have loved her, but you didn't even give me the chance." Naomi appeared in the doorway then, framed by the heavy oak, eyes sharp and steady. "Then maybe love starts now." The room turned. Preston stood. "Naomi, this isn't your fight." "Yes, it is," she said, walking in slowly. "It always has been." She looked at Terrell. "What are you really here for?" He smiled at her like they were siblings playing cards on a porch, not enemies squaring off in a war. "Same thing you should want," he said. "What's owed? I don't want your version of justice." "You sure about that?" He walked toward her. "Because you ain't just a seamstress anymore, sweetheart. You're a Carter. You're sitting on shares, voting rights, access. You think they'll really let you ignore that? I'm not interested in tearing the house down just to prove I belong in it." He studied her for a long time. "You're gonna have to choose, Naomi. Sooner or later. Them or me." She said nothing. Preston leaned over the table, both palms flat against the wood. "Enough. This is a company, not a playground. And if we're done playing DNA games, I have a business to run." Terrell nodded. "Sure, you run it, for now. But that audit's coming, and when it does," he looked at Naomi, "you might be sitting at this table, whether you like it or not." He turned and left the room, the heavy doors swinging open behind him like a declaration of war. Later, Malik found Naomi standing alone on the balcony overlooking the west garden. "You okay?" he asked. She gave a faint smile. "Number, but I'm used to pretending I am." He stepped beside her, resting his elbows on the railing. "My mom said she's leaving, going back to DC. She says she doesn't know who she married anymore." Naomi didn't respond. Malik turned to her. "Do you want it? The company?" She looked out at the sunset. "I want what's mine. I just don't know if this is it." "Maybe what's ours isn't in a building," he said, "or on paper." She turned toward him, her voice soft. "Then where is it?" "In moments like this," he said, "in the fact that we're still standing, still together." She let her forehead rest against his shoulder, her breath shaky. Downstairs, Denise entered the mansion one final time, not with a basket of towels or a bottle of bleach, just her purse, her keys, and a resignation letter tucked inside an envelope. She left it on Preston's desk, and with one last glance at the house where she'd spent half her life pretending to be less, she walked out the front door. A maid no longer. A mother, always. The days after the meeting were filled with a tense kind of stillness, the kind of quiet that can only exist when everything has already exploded. Naomi hadn't spoken to Preston, and she didn't plan to. She barely exchanged words with Janelle, who had retreated into a kind of cold, calculating silence, still reeling from the public exposure. It was as if the entire Carter household had slipped into a space where no one knew who was in charge, who was family, or who was next. But Naomi had no time for any of that. She wasn't just fighting for a place in the Carter empire anymore. She was fighting for herself. The decision to return to the fashion industry, to step out of the shadows and into the light, came in a quiet, rebellious moment. Naomi found herself in her mother's old room late one night, surrounded by rolls of fabric and the sketches she'd tucked away in hidden corners. She had always told herself it was a dream too big for her to chase, but now she knew it wasn't. It had been inside her all along. All the quiet moments, The stolen hours sketching by candlelight, the ideas that danced in her head when she should have been asleep. She hadn't needed permission to be who she was. She just had to step into it. Her first collection was small, 5 pieces, all designed with the intricate care she'd always put into her work. Midnight blues, deep purples, and soft metallics. Dresses that made a statement without being loud. Each one reflected a part of her she hadn't known she was hiding. She took a deep breath as she looked at the final piece. A long, form-fitting gown with layers of sheer fabric that shimmered under the dim light. It was everything she'd ever wanted to wear, to create, to show the world that Naomi Jones was more than just a maid's daughter. She was someone who had a voice, a talent, a vision. The next step was the hardest, getting her work seen. She sent the designs out, one by one, to a handful of boutiques and private investors she'd met during her few years working in the fashion world. It was a long shot, but Naomi had never been afraid of hard work. It was around this time that Tyrell made his move. Tyrell stood outside the towering glass building of Carter Enterprises, his black leather jacket catching the light of the late afternoon sun. He didn't look at the building with awe. He didn't care about the structure, the wealth, or the name. What mattered to him was the power inside it, the power he was about to take. He had learned quickly that you didn't get to the top by playing by the rules. You played the game, and if there were no rules, you made your own. He entered the building, walking past security with the same smooth confidence he always carried. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the message. It was from his lawyer. The audit begins Monday. Prepare for the media fallout. Carter's not going down quietly. Tyrell smiled. They never did, but this wasn't about the fall. It was about the rise. Inside the office, Preston Carter sat behind his massive desk, his posture stiff and his expression colder than ever. "You called for me?" Tyrell asked as he pushed open the door, stepping inside without waiting for permission. "Sit down," Preston said, his voice tight. "I think we need to have a conversation about your future." Tyrell took a seat across from him, looking every bit the part of the son who was finally taking his place in the family business. "I'm listening." Preston didn't mince words. "You think you can just walk in here and claim what's mine? This company, this empire, everything I've built, you think you can just take it from me?" "I don't want everything, old man," Tyrell replied, leaning forward. "I just want what's mine." Preston's fingers tapped against the desk, betraying the anger bubbling under the surface. "You're not my son. You're a mistake, a complication, and you'll never understand what it took to build this. You have no right." Tyrell's smile was slow and deliberate. "I have every right, and when the press gets a hold of this audit, when they see your precious legacy crumbling, maybe you'll finally realize how much of a mistake I really am." Preston froze. "Consider this a warning, old man," Tyrell said, standing up. "This company, it's mine now, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Back at the mansion, Naomi sat in her room, sketching out ideas for her first fashion show. Her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. She glanced at the screen. It was an email from one of the boutiques she'd sent her designs to. Subject, proposal, Naomi Carter Collection. Her pulse quickened as she opened it. "Dear Ms. Carter, we've reviewed your designs and would like to extend an invitation to present your first collection at our private event. We believe your work has the potential to be groundbreaking, and we would love to partner with you on this journey." Naomi stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring as her heart raced. This was it. She was going to do it. She was going to make her mark on the world. But just as she was about to respond, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Malik. She stood, her heart fluttering unexpectedly as he stepped inside. He was dressed casually, a white shirt and jeans that looked too perfect on him, his hair tousled in that way that made her weak in the knees. "Hey," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Hey," she replied softly. Malik didn't beat around the bush. "You're leaving?" Naomi blinked. "What?" He stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You're leaving the mansion. I can see it in your eyes." Naomi hesitated. She had planned to leave, to step out into the world, to build her own life, but she hadn't expected Malik to notice. "I have to," she whispered. "I can't stay here, Malik. Not in this house that's built on lies. Not when I'm trying to build something real." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and familiar. "You don't have to leave me behind. You never did." "I'm not leaving you," she said softly. "I'm leaving the past. I'm leaving everything that keeps me tied down. I want something different, something more." Malik looked down at their hands, then back into her eyes. "I'll be with you, no matter what it takes." Naomi smiled, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. "You're not alone in this," he said, squeezing her hand. Outside, the thunder began to roll in, but inside Naomi's heart, the storm had already passed. She had made her choice, and now it was time to fight for her future. Later that night, Tyrell stood on the rooftop of a building in downtown Atlanta, staring out over the lights of the city. He'd won. He had the power now, the Carter name, the trust, the company. He was everything he had ever wanted. But as he looked down at the city below, he realized something. Power meant nothing if you didn't have anyone to share it with. The wind whipped through his hair, and he thought of Naomi, of Malik, of the family he had never been a part of. He wasn't ready to lose everything just yet, but sometimes the only way to take control was to burn everything down first, and Tyrell Morgan was ready to set the fire. The press didn't take long to circle like vultures. By morning, the Carter switch scandal was plastered across every local news broadcast and gossip blog from Atlanta to D.C. Headlines screamed betrayal, paternity, legacy wars. Photos of Naomi, Tyrell, Malik, and even Denise were blown up and dragged into timelines of confusion and speculation. The Carter name was a wildfire, and Tyrell was fanning the flames. The next morning, Naomi stepped onto the runway at a private showroom in the heart of Atlanta's design district. Her showcase was modest, 50 invited guests, mostly boutique owners, bloggers, and 2 buyers from New York. But when the lights hit her designs, the room shifted. She didn't need to speak. Her work did it for her. Dresses inspired by grief and growth, by luxury and roots, by the girl who grew up folding napkins and dreaming in silence. The crowd stood, applauded. After the show, a woman in a sleek blazer approached her with a card. "I'm from Milan," she said with an accent. "We'd like to fly you out next month. Your story is extraordinary, but your eye is rare." Naomi blinked. "Thank you." As the room cleared, Malik stepped into the empty space and opened his arms. She fell into them, and for the first time in weeks, she breathed, truly breathed. But outside, Tyrell sat in a town car, watching the doors from across the street. He wore sunglasses, a gold watch, the smirk of a man who wasn't done. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Yeah, it's me. She's rising. You know what to do." He hung up and smiled, because sometimes, even when the fire dies down, there's always something left to burn. Naomi stood by the long window of her new studio, watching rain streak down the glass, like threads unraveling from the sky. The applause from her showcase echoed in her mind, but so did the silence that followed. She had thought success would bring relief, that validation would quiet the ache, but instead she felt exposed, like she'd stepped into the light only to realize how many shadows were still following her. Her phone buzzed for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Unknown number. She didn't answer, There had been a steady stream of calls since her runway show. Magazine requests, interviews, investment inquiries. But now another type of message had begun to show up. Anonymous emails, subject lines that chilled her. You stole that collection. Your real name's not Carter. The industry's about to know what you really are. She deleted them all. But the dread remained. Malik entered the room just as she sank into the window seat. He watched her for a moment before crossing the floor. I heard from the boutique, he said gently. Your line's sold out. The pre-orders are 3 times what they projected. She nodded without looking up. Great. He sat beside her. You want to tell me what's wrong? I'm getting threats. His posture shifted. From who? Naomi shrugged. No names, just hate, the usual kind. Reminders that I'm not one of them, that I don't belong in their circles, that I didn't earn it. Bullshit, Malik said. You earned every stitch. She finally looked at him. You really think Terrell's not behind it? I know he is. There was a beat of silence between them. Then, I want to go public, Naomi said. About the switch, the test, all of it. Malik tensed. Are you sure? He's using our silence like a weapon, controlling the narrative. If we don't speak, he'll keep twisting the story, keep turning it into something ugly. Then we do it together. She gave him a small smile, but behind it was a storm waiting to break. Across the city, Terrell sat in a leather chair inside one of the Carter-owned media subsidiaries, a glossy PR office filled with manicured assistants and slick-haired managers who smiled too much. He wasn't here for their charm. He leaned forward, placing a file on the conference table with a quiet thud. Run it. The woman across from him hesitated. Mr. Carter, this is aggressive. He raised an eyebrow. Are you in the business of protecting reputations or rebuilding mine? She flipped through the file. Photos, screenshots, a forged document or two, claims of stolen designs, whispered accusations tied to Naomi's past jobs, exaggerated and unfounded, but designed to plant doubt. She's rising too fast, Terrell said, and if she thinks I'm going to let her wear my name while pretending she didn't take everything from me. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The PR woman nodded. We'll leak it anonymously, frame it as industry gossip, nothing traceable. Make sure it spreads. 2 days later, Naomi woke up to her name trending on Twitter, not for her designs, for the scandal. CarterCon, stolen silk. Naomi the fraud. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through comments that cut like razors. This girl came out of nowhere and now she's top of the game? Nah, something's off. She was a maid's daughter a year ago. Now she's an heiress and a fashion icon? Must be nice. Sources say she used stolen designs from a boutique she used to work at. Malik entered, half-dressed, coffee in hand. One look at her face, and he knew. How bad? Bad. He handed her the coffee, then pulled out his phone. I'll call your lawyer. You'll need a defamation claim filed today, and a counter-statement. Naomi looked up at him. This isn't just public hate, it's coordinated. He nodded. I've seen Terrell's playbook. This is straight from it. Her hands trembled around the mug. All I wanted was to build something real. Malik crouched in front of her, taking the mug from her hands. You did? This? He gestured at the storm outside. This is noise, it's glass trying to cut diamonds. People think I cheated my way in. Then show them the grind. Show them the girl who stitched her name into every hem, every line. Naomi nodded slowly, grounding herself. Later that day, she held a press conference outside her studio. She wore one of her own designs, a bold, burnt orange suit dress with clean lines and no apology. Dozens of reporters gathered, cameras aimed, ready to pounce. Naomi stepped up to the mic. My name is Naomi Elise Carter, and I want to speak the truth before others try to sell the lie. Flashes exploded like fireworks, but she didn't flinch. I was born into a story I didn't choose. I grew up as the maid's daughter, not knowing I was actually the heir to the Carter name. When I learned the truth, I didn't demand power. I didn't threaten anyone. I did what I've always done. I worked. Her voice never wavered. I built my first collection in a one-room studio, with no budget and no team. Every design you've seen, it came from my hands. Every stitch, every line. I didn't take from anyone. I created something from what I had. Grit, memory, and legacy. She stepped back from the podium as the room erupted. Online, the tides began to shift. Journalists praised her poise. Industry leaders tweeted support. Designers she once apprenticed under posted old photos, defending her talent. Malik watched from the back, pride rising in his chest like a tide. She was winning. Not just the press war, but something deeper. She was owning her name. That night, Tyrell watched the conference on his phone from the back seat of a town car. His jaw clenched as he heard the applause. "You underestimated her," said the driver. Tyrell glanced up. "What did you just say?" The man hesitated. She's not folding." Tyrell leaned back in the seat. "No," he murmured, "but everyone breaks eventually." His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Ready to make the next move?" He smiled. "Let's ruin the Carter family from the inside." Back in the mansion, Preston stared at a legal document in his lap. It was a notice. Carter Enterprises XV Tyrell. Morgan motion to freeze assets pending board review. Malik had filed it that afternoon. On behalf of Naomi, the boy he raised, the girl he ignored, the daughter he tried to hide. They had come for his kingdom, and this time he wasn't sure he could stop them. The sky over Atlanta was thick with haze, the kind that came before a heavy storm. On the 22nd floor of Carter Tower, Naomi stood before a wall of glass, watching clouds churn across the horizon like smoke in slow motion. She could see her reflection in the window, calm, composed, the edges of her burnt orange dress crisp and clean. But inside she burned. A war was unfolding, and now she was no longer a secret. She was the fire. The motion to freeze Tyrell's shares had been filed, and the board was due to vote at the end of the week. Malik had pulled every string he had left. Naomi had gone public with the truth, and the public, surprisingly, had begun to lean in her favor. But Tyrell, he wasn't the type to retreat. He was the kind of man who burned the foundation before he'd let anyone else build on it. She knew something was coming. What she didn't know was when, or how bad it would be. Malik entered the office quietly, phone in hand, brow furrowed. He looked like he hadn't slept, and Naomi knew he hadn't. He was juggling too much, protecting her, fighting Tyrell, navigating his own identity crisis in a world that had never seen him as anything but the Carter heir. But even now, stripped of that title, rejected by his father, slandered in the media, he stood beside her. Loyal, grounded, her anchor. "He's going after your old life," Malik said, voice low. "I just got a call from your former employer, the one from the boutique where you interned 2 years ago." Naomi stiffened. "What did he do?" "He offered them a contract to purchase designs from that year, then implied you'd taken ideas that weren't yours." Naomi's chest tightened. "That's a lie. I left those patterns behind. They weren't even finished concepts." "He doesn't care. He's trying to muddy the water." "I've already explained my history in the press." Malik gave her a look. "He's not trying to win the public. He's trying to shake you." Naomi turned back to the window. "He thinks I'll walk away if he digs deep enough." Malik crossed the room, stopping inches behind her. "Will you?" She didn't answer right away. I was scared when this all started, she said. But now, I'm something else. What? Angry. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Then use it, he murmured, but don't let it turn you into him. She nodded once, then her phone buzzed. One new email, no subject, no body, just an attachment. She opened it, then stopped breathing. It was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. Naomi, no more than 16, standing at a fabric counter, tears in her eyes. Behind her, a manager yelling. Her hands were clenched. Another image showed her being escorted out of the boutique. She remembered that day. She had spoken up when a co-worker tried to steal her sketchbook. She'd refused to apologize, and they'd called it disruptive behavior. She had never told anyone, but somehow Tyrell had found it, dug it out of some backroom file or security archive. And now he was threatening to release it. The subject was clear, even if it wasn't typed. I can destroy what you've built, or you can walk away. Naomi sat slowly in her chair, hands shaking. Malik leaned over her shoulder, reading the screen. You're not responding to that, he said firmly. Naomi shook her head. Number, I'm going to do something better. She opened her own press contact list and hit record. This is Naomi Carter, she said, and I want to tell you a story. 20 miles away, Tyrell sat in a sleek high-rise apartment. Carter owned, of course, sipping whiskey from a crystal tumbler while watching Naomi's live video unfold on his flat screen. She didn't cry, she didn't stammer, she didn't play victim. Instead, she laid it bare. Yes, I was kicked out of a boutique at 16 for defending my own work, for standing up to a culture that told me my voice was too loud, my talent too raw, and my place too small. I left that place with nothing but my sketchbook, and I kept creating, kept designing, because I knew I had something to say. The comments rolled in beneath the video. Protect Naomi Carter at all costs. This is how you handle a smear campaign. We believe you, sis. Tyrell's jaw ticked. She was winning. Again. He tossed the glass across the room. It shattered against the wall. His assistant entered moments later, startled by the noise. You all right, Mr. Carter? Tyrell didn't answer, just stared at the frozen screen, where Naomi's face held calm strength, the kind he had never known, the kind that didn't need revenge to survive, the kind that made people follow. He picked up his phone and dialed. Tell the board if they freeze my shares, he said, voice like gravel. I'll take the company down in flames. I'll release every file, every audit error, every offshore transaction your precious Preston ever buried. A beat of silence. Try me. The next day, Naomi and Malik sat side by side in a conference room across town, opposite two lawyers and a Carter Enterprises liaison. Preston wasn't there, but his signature was, on a document proposing a strategic reorganization of board shares, reassigning Naomi as interim vice chair, a public relations move, they claimed, a way to balance the brand. Naomi stared at the paper. You want to make me the face, she said, so you can distance yourself from Tyrell. Yes, the lawyer admitted, and because the board is nervous. Naomi folded her hands. And what happens when the board isn't nervous anymore? No one answered. Malik leaned in. Don't take it, Naomi. She turned to him. Why not? Because it's bait. They want to use you to shut him up, not because they believe in you. Naomi smiled. Exactly. She signed the paper anyway, because she wasn't afraid of being used anymore. She was building leverage, and when the storm finally hit, she'd have both hands on the wheel. That evening, Denise returned from Savannah, quietly stepping back into Naomi's world like she'd never left. She found her daughter in the new studio, pinning a sleeve to a mannequin, humming under her breath. "You look good," Denise said. Naomi looked up. "So do you." "You're glowing." Naomi chuckled softly. "I'm exhausted." They embraced. Denise pulled back and looked into her daughter's face. "You ain't just surviving, baby," she said. "You're rising." Naomi felt the truth in her mother's voice, but she also felt the storm in the air, and she knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Tyrell Morgan was unraveling. He stood in the center of the same penthouse suite he'd once admired through the window of a city bus. The skyline spread before him in all directions, glittering, wide and indifferent. The lights didn't care who owned the floors below, and tonight neither did he. The alcohol on his breath was sharp. The ice in his glass had melted. He paced. The text he'd sent to the Carter board had gone unanswered. The lawyers had gone silent. The media had stopped calling. His threats were running dry, and his name, the one he'd fought so hard to claim, no longer struck fear. Worse, it no longer drew sympathy. Naomi had done what he never could. She made the Carter name mean something human. She hadn't bought power, she earned it, and the world had seen it. "Unbelievable," Tyrell muttered, voice thick. "They want her? The one who folded napkins in their damn dining room?" He stared down at the bottle in his hand. Then he hurled it at the wall. It shattered, the sound high and final. In the broken glass, he saw his own reflection, twisted, red-eyed, and no closer to peace than he'd been when this began. A knock came at the door. He ignored it. The knock came again, harder. With a sigh, Tyrell crossed the room and yanked it open. Preston Carter stood there, still in his tailored charcoal suit. No smile, no threats, just eyes that had aged 20 years in 2 months. "You got nerve," Tyrell muttered. "I came to talk." Too late for that. Preston stepped in anyway. "Then let's finish what we never started." Tyrell slammed the door behind him. "What? You want to beg now? Offer me hush money again? I've got nothing to lose, old man." Preston didn't flinch. "That's exactly what I'm here about. You've got nothing left, and that's your problem." Tyrell laughed bitterly. "My problem? You abandoned your son. You traded me for silence." "I didn't know you existed." "You knew," Tyrell hissed. "You always knew. You just didn't want me." Preston finally snapped. "You think this life was easy? You think building an empire from dirt and debt didn't cost me everything? You think I could have raised a child in the middle of that without losing my mind?" Tyrell stepped close, voice venom. "You didn't lose your mind. You just didn't want to stain your name." Silence fell. Preston turned away. "You're right." Tyrell blinked. Preston looked back at him. "I was a coward. I chose my legacy over my blood. I failed Denise. I failed Naomi. And I failed you." Tyrell didn't move. "I can't fix the past," Preston said, "but I can stop the damage now." He reached into his coat and slid a folder onto the counter. Tyrell opened it. Inside, a full proposal to dissolve his interim shares, in exchange for a full severance package, media protection, and a seat on a new philanthropic venture backed by the Carter Trust. Tyrell stared at it. "You want me to walk away?" "I'm offering you a future," Preston said. "One that doesn't end with you in handcuffs or headlines." "And Naomi? She just gets the crown?" "She gets what you both were denied, but she's not keeping it from you. You're burning it away yourself." Tyrell said nothing. He just stared at the fire he'd built, and for the first time, he didn't know whether to feed it or put it out. Naomi was at the theater, the abandoned one, the place she and Malik used to sneak into when they were younger. The velvet curtains were moth-eaten, the stage lights long since gone, but the bones of it were still there. So was he. She found Malik sitting in the third row, elbows on knees, eyes glassy with memory. She sat beside him, folding her hands in her lap. "They offered Terrell a way out," she said softly. "I heard." "I don't know if he'll take it," Malik sighed. "He might, or he might burn it all down just to make sure no one else wins." Naomi leaned into him. "We're still standing. For now." She turned to him. "You scared?" "Yes, aren't you?" She nodded. "I'm scared I'll lose who I was trying to become." "You haven't," he said. "You've just grown. The girl who dreamed in sketches is still here. She just doesn't need permission anymore." She smiled faintly. "I miss Simple," she said. Malik touched her face, gently tilting it toward him. "We make it simple again, you and me." "You still love me?" she asked. "Even now?" He kissed her forehead. "I love you because of now, because I've seen you rise, break, rebuild, and never ask for applause." She closed her eyes. "I love you too." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in the silence of a place where dreams once echoed, and still did. The next morning, Terrell stood outside Naomi's studio, uninvited, unarmed, uncertain. She stepped out the door and saw him immediately. Her body went still. "I'm not here to fight," he said quickly. "Then why are you here?" "To say I'm sorry." Naomi stared at him. "For what exactly? The smear campaign? The threats? The pictures?" He lowered his gaze. "All of it." "And?" "I'm leaving." She didn't expect that. He held up the folder Preston had given him. "I signed. I'm walking away from the company." "From the war, why?" she asked, genuinely. Terrell shrugged. "Because I was never trying to build something. I just wanted to break something before it broke me." She nodded slowly. I don't forgive you," she said. "I don't expect you to. But I hope you find peace." His eyes flickered. "So do I." And he walked away, just like that. No flames, no last words. Just a man who had finally stopped setting fire to everything he touched. 1 week later, Naomi stood backstage at the official launch of her first national line. Legacy by Naomi Carter. The fashion world had come, the cameras, the press, the buyers, the skeptics. She smoothed her gown, the same midnight silk she'd once shown Janelle unknowingly, and walked out into the light. The room exploded, and among the crowd, front row, stood Malik, smiling. At the after-party, as champagne flowed and cameras clicked, Naomi and Malik slipped out to the balcony alone. Atlanta stretched before them, wild, proud, electric. "You ever think we'd get here?" she asked. "Not like this," he said, "but maybe this was the only way." Naomi laughed softly. "You think your dad's proud?" Malik smirked. "Don't care. I'm proud of us." They kissed as the city sang around them, not because they had won, but because they were no longer surviving someone else's story. They were writing their own. A year had passed, not the kind of year that faded into memory, but the kind that etched itself into the soul, cutting lines deep enough to divide a life into before and after. The Carter mansion still stood atop the Atlanta hills, tall and proud, but quieter now. The long, echoing halls held fewer secrets. The staff walked with less urgency. The sharpness that had once defined its every surface had softened. Or maybe the people had simply changed. In the private family garden, one rarely used since Janelle moved permanently to Savannah, Naomi stood beneath a white rose arbor, her hands folded around a small silk-bound notebook. Her sketchbook, the original one. Torn edges, frayed binding, and dreams stitched across every page. The sun filtered through her curls as the breeze carried the scent of jasmine and history. Behind her, rows of guests filled white chairs along the stone pathway. Malik stood at the edge of the aisle in a tailored cream suit, no tie, collar open, a single rose pinned to his lapel. He wasn't the boy who used to speed through Buckhead in a cherry-red Benz anymore. He was still Malik, but now he was a man who had chosen himself and chosen her. Naomi met his eyes and smiled. The music swelled, and together, beneath the same sky that had once watched them hide in attic shadows, they said, "I do." There was no massive headline, no viral scandal, no stolen spotlight, just two people who had survived the storm and decided to bloom in the aftermath. The reception was held at the newly renamed Jones Carter Center for Design and Innovation, a downtown non-profit Naomi had launched just 3 months earlier. It was more than a building, it was a legacy, a space for young black designers, seamstresses, artists, and thinkers, the kind of kids who dreamed big but had nowhere to grow those dreams. The first floor showcased Naomi's debut national line, the Legacy Collection, now sold in boutiques across 5 major cities. Her second line, Roots, was already under development, inspired by home, motherhood, and healing. Denise, now director of outreach at the center, moved through the crowd in a deep forest green wrap dress, laughing with donors, greeting guests with grace and warmth. She passed by Preston Carter, once the Empire, now a man still figuring out who he was without his crown. He stood off to the side in a charcoal grey suit, quieter than anyone remembered him ever being. He watched Naomi and Malik move together on the dance floor, like they were made from the same rhythm. He hadn't said much at the ceremony, but when Naomi passed near him, he cleared his throat. She stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," she replied. Preston fidgeted with his cufflink. "I wasn't sure you'd invite me." "I didn't," she said. "Malik did." A pause. "But I'm glad you came." He looked down at his shoes. "I wanted to say something." "I'm listening." He took a breath, like it was heavier than air. "I failed you, not just once, but over and over, and I don't expect you to forgive me." "I don't," she said gently. He nodded. "But I understand," she added. "That's enough." Preston looked up at her, a flicker of relief in his expression. "I'm proud of you," he said. Naomi smiled softly. "You should be. Tyrell didn't come. There was no dramatic return, no last-minute apology, no toast made from the shadows. He was gone, at least for now. Rumors had him in Houston, working with a startup non-profit for young men in underserved neighborhoods. Others said he'd left the country. Naomi didn't follow the rumors. Some stories didn't need a final chapter, just an ending. And for Tyrell, that meant stepping away before he became the villain in a play already too crowded with ghosts. Later that night, Naomi sat on the rooftop of the studio beside Malik, both of them barefoot, champagne flutes in hand, the city glowing beneath them like a galaxy on fire. She leaned against his shoulder. "Tired?" he asked, glowing and exhausted. "That's the new tagline for married life, right?" She laughed. "Something like that." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A box. She turned to him. "You already gave me a ring." "This isn't jewelry." She opened it carefully. Inside was an old pocket watch, silver, engraved with a name. Malik's name. She blinked. "My grandfather gave it to my dad," he said. He told him, "Don't give this to the son who carries your name. Give it to the one who carries your values." "Malik, you carry them," he said. "Every damn one." She kissed him, slow and deep and real, then whispered, "We built this." "From nothing." "No," she said, resting her head on his chest. "From love. That's not nothing." Below them, the lights of the city twinkled like stars catching their breath. Somewhere in the studio below, one of Naomi's original dresses stood on display, a floor-length silk gown embroidered with words stitched in gold thread. The name you carry matters less than the life you create with it. And outside the building, etched into the stone just above the door, was a single line: Jones Carter, built from love, stitched by fire. The Carter mansion was quieter now. The polished floors still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled, but the weight that had once haunted its halls had lifted. What once stood as a monument to wealth now felt like the shell of something that had outlived its reign. Naomi stood at the threshold of the grand ballroom, the same space where she'd once served drinks in silence, where her mother had walked in black uniforms and soft shoes, where men in suits whispered deals and measured women with money instead of merit. She stood now in white, not a gown, a tailored pantsuit, sharp and striking, with gold cuffs, and her hair coiled in a crown atop her head. She held a single envelope in her hand, embossed, sealed in gold wax. Inside, the final document that would end it all. Not destroy, not divide, but close. Across the room sat Preston Carter. His eyes were heavy now, from age, regret, and truth. Since the day the real story came out, that Naomi was not his biological daughter, that she was never meant to inherit the Carter legacy, that she had been switched at birth in a scandal long buried, Preston had become a man in reflection, not defiant, not angry, just quiet. He watched her cross the room, footsteps echoing softly. Malik walked a step behind her, not guarding, not leading, just with her, as always. "Is it done?" Preston asked. Naomi placed the envelope on the table between them. "Signed, notarized, witnessed. The Carter name and all its holdings are yours again." Preston blinked. "You're walking away." "I'm walking forward." "You could have taken it all." "I did," Naomi said. "I took everything that mattered, and I made it mine." She sat down. The air between them held 1,000 unsaid words. "I failed you," Preston said quietly, "from the very beginning." "I'm not here for apologies," Naomi said, "but I do want truth." He nodded. She continued, her voice calm. "The day they told you the babies were sick, did you know?" He hesitated. Then, "No, not at first." Naomi watched his eyes. "I started to suspect months later. Little things. The way Tyrell's eyes looked. The shape of your mouth. I pushed it down. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. You let Tyrell believe he was your son. And I punished him for not becoming the man I expected. And me? I tried to bury you with kindness, and later, with silence." Naomi exhaled through her nose. "That silence nearly destroyed us." "I know." A long pause. Then Preston leaned forward. "But you built something I never could. Something real, something grounded, and that terrifies me more than losing this empire." Naomi gave a faint, tired smile. "It should." Outside the mansion, Malik waited with the car. The afternoon sun stretched low over the trees as Naomi stepped out, the wind lifting strands of her hair. He opened the door for her, then paused. "How'd it go?" "I told him goodbye." "Was that enough?" Naomi nodded. "It has to be." They drove in silence for a while, past the neighborhoods that once ignored Naomi's existence, past the boutiques that once rejected her designs, past the billboard now towering over Peachtree Street that read, "Legacy is what you leave behind. Naomi Jones." They didn't speak again until they reached the cemetery. It was small, tucked behind an old Baptist church in South Atlanta. The grass had been freshly cut. The air smelled like honeysuckle and sun-warmed stone. Naomi walked to a modest grave under a wide tree. Clara Franklin, her birth mother, the woman she never knew, but somehow always carried. She knelt and placed a gardenia beside the headstone. "I met someone who played your music," she whispered. Said you used to sing every Friday night at a jazz lounge near Auburn Avenue. Said you used to cry when you sang. Said your voice felt like it came from someone carrying too many names. She smiled through the ache. I guess I inherited that part. She stood slowly and turned to Malik. I think I want to change my name legally. To what? To Naomi Elise Jones Franklin. He nodded. It fits you. She took his hand. I don't need the Carter name. I never did. You made it valuable, though. She smirked. And now I'm giving it back. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. No scandals. No lawsuits. No interviews. Naomi and Malik spent their mornings in the small house in Cascade Heights, their afternoons in the downtown studio, and their evenings walking hand in hand through neighborhoods that now knew her by face, not by family. The Jones Franklin studio launched its final collection under the Legacy line, Origins, a tribute to all the pieces she had once been, the servant's daughter, the CEO's mistake, the forgotten child, the secret girlfriend, the scandalous name. Now, a woman in full. 3 months later, Tyrell Morgan returned. Quietly, no press, no speeches, just a visit to Naomi's studio. Malik wasn't there. Denise was out. It was just the two of them, the boy raised in power and the girl lazed in silence. I got your invitation, Tyrell said. Didn't think it was real. It was, Naomi said. Have a seat. He sat. The walls around them bore Naomi's designs. Powerful, elegant, layered. Her work now hung in the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. She had just been named one of Time's 100 most influential women. And here they were, back where it all started. How have you been? She asked. Learning, Tyrell said. Unlearning. He looked around. This place is beautiful. It's real. I spent my life chasing everything but that. Naomi nodded. You still mad? I was, he admitted. But then I realized maybe we were both robbed, just in different ways. I agree. He stood. I don't know what the future looks like for me. I think that's the good part, she said. It's yours now, not someone else's story you're trying to rewrite. He hesitated, then, You ever hate me? Naomi met his eyes. I hated what you represented, but no, I didn't hate you. He looked down. I think that's worse. No, she said softly. That's healing. He left with no hug, no fanfare, just a quiet smile and peace he hadn't known he was missing. On a warm spring afternoon, nearly a year after the wedding, Naomi stood before a crowd of over 3,000 gathered at the Atlanta Civic Center. It was her keynote speech at the National Black Creators Summit. Her name echoed on the program. Naomi Jones Franklin, artist, activist, architect of truth. She took the stage in a black and gold pantsuit, her hair coiled, her eyes bright. I was once told my name didn't belong beside brilliance, she said. The crowd hushed. I was told it was borrowed, stolen, a mistake. I was told I didn't come from power. I came from dust. Pause. But dust, if you give it wind, becomes something else entirely. Applause. I was born into the wrong story, raised in the wrong house, fell in love with someone who wasn't supposed to want me. Louder now. And yet, I made a name out of every piece they tried to erase. Thunderous now. She smiled. My name isn't Carter, it's Truth. My legacy isn't theirs, it's ours. The crowd rose, applause, cheers, tears, and somewhere in the back of the room, Denise stood with Malik beside her, eyes filled with pride. That night, Naomi lay beside Malik in their quiet home, the windows open, wind whispering through the magnolia leaves outside. She turned to him. Do you ever think about how it started? She asked. He chuckled. You mean us sneaking around in the servants' hallway, like we were in a soap opera? She laughed. Exactly. I loved you even then, he said. I didn't believe it back then, she said. But I do now. He reached for her hand. I'd marry you again tomorrow. She kissed his palm. You will, she teased. Next year, garden wedding, just us and 50 people. He grinned. You planning this already? I'm planning everything, because now I finally get to live without waiting for permission. And just like that, with no scandal, no camera, no contract, Naomi closed her eyes and drifted into the soft silence of a life that was hers. Not borrowed, not broken, just beautifully, finally, hers. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.